Will my calendar be full? Says no manager ever. As leaders, oftentimes our are so full that it's hard for us to determine what to make a top priority or what needs to be removed for us to be the most effective. There's so many obligations and so many things pulling at you all day long that sometimes it just feels like you can't get anything going the way it needs to go. Now we'll just hang on a little bit and we're going to talk about more about solving that problem. You're listening to the Clark Connection Podcast.
This is the Clark Connection Podcast, your weekly dose of inspiration and power. We'll dive deep into the stories and strategies that ignite personal growth and entrepreneurial fire. Join us as we empower you to take control, level up your leadership, and build the life you deserve. Get ready to rise, to thrive, and to finally become the leader of your own destiny. Let's go.
Welcome to the Clark Connection Podcast. Great to have you on here. I'm your host, Aaron Clark, aka the Coach. You know me. Now listen, guys, that we have an excellent episode today that we are going to go through, and you're going to learn about the Pareto Principle. Now this will help you with learning to prioritize and manage your priorities a little bit better. But before we get going, I want to give a quick shout out to my sponsors. First, I want to thank Wayne with 7K Metals. Hit Wayne up for all of your silver and gold needs. Next, I want to thank Bobbie with the Comfy Quest LLC. Hit her up for any craniosacral, any manual lymphatic drainage. Any of those services, they're awesome. Hit her up. Tell her Coach Clark sent you. And then I want to thank Andrew with Automate Integrate Professional Services. See Andrew for any of your professional services. Need anything from marketing to automations, he's got you. And so let's dive in, guys. And so, as a leader, I totally get what we started off talking about, your schedule being full and having to really go through and manage those priorities. Now, on a short day of mine, it usually consists of at least 5 meetings. But my longest days, so I do have several days that are just really, really long. And the longest one that I had this previous week it started with a 7 a.m. Zoom. Up next, with a 7:30 Zoom meeting. And then I respond to emails from about 8 a.m. to 8:30. About that time, I then go get my vehicle and drive to my 9 o'clock meeting, which is then followed by a 10 o'clock meeting, a 10:45 meeting, 11:30 meeting, which then rolls right into about a 12:15 meeting where I eat lunch while having a conversation with one of my mentors. Excuse me. And we discuss, when I'm meeting with that mentor, we discuss things that are going on with work, KPIs, all the other stuff that is important for me to have somebody outside to take a look at. And next, I usually have some sort of other meeting at 1:30, followed by 2 o'clock one-on-one, and then another 3 o'clock one-on-one meeting, followed by my stand-up meeting with the sales team at 4:30. And I finish all of that about 5, which is when I really get started going in on the rest of my work that I did not get to do for the rest of the day. And that takes about another 3 to 4 hours. So we're talking somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock that I'm working. That's a 14-hour day. And that doesn't include all the other phone calls, text messages, emails, people in and out of your office during those times where they need you as the leader to help them solve their problems. And so if you're a leader in any organization or anything like that, you can probably relate to this. When I say oftentimes I feel like if I could just get another 5 to 10 hours a day, I could get so much more in. But we don't get that. You see, everybody has the same 24 hours every single day. That comes out to be 1,440 minutes or 86,400 seconds. That we all have the same amount of time each and every single day. And as a leader, you're forced to constantly examine, what choices, my calendar, what's on my calendar, what are my priorities. And with all this craziness going on, as a leader, that you've got to go through and see that with the schedule of those, what are my golf balls? And you may just be thinking, whoa, Aaron, what are you talking about? What do you mean? They're my golf balls. And so they got a story of a college professor. One day he goes into his class, and on the desk in front, he puts a big old jar, and he immediately starts filling it with golf balls. Once he puts the last golf ball in there, he looks up at the class and he says, "Class, is the jar full?" And the class answers responsibly, and they said, "Well, yeah, the glass is full, or the jar is full." The professor then reaches into his bag and pulls out another container that is containing some small pebbles. And he starts pouring the pebbles into the container. And he's shaking it a little bit so they can move into all the other little crevices. And once he empties it out all the way, he looks back up at the class and says, "Class, is the jar full?" And they say, "Well, yeah, the jar's full." So he then reaches in and gets out a bag of sand. Yeah, in his bag, he's got a bag of sand. And he starts putting handfuls of sand into the jar and shaking it. And then shaking it. And then he puts some more in and he shakes it until he's run out of sand. And it is full, it is full to the top. And he says, "Class, is the jar full now?" And they say, "Yes." Huh. He then reaches over to his little thermos that he always had with him, pours 2 cups of coffee, and then pours them into the jar and says, "Guys, is the jar full?" And they all resoundingly say, "Yes, the jar is full." And he says, "Awesome." So guys, what it was that he was doing and presenting, he said that the golf balls represent the important things in your life. That your family, that your health, that all those things like that, the things that are the most important to you, those are your golf balls. The next, your house, your car, the dog, fill in the blank, that those would be the smaller pebbles. And then the sand, it's everything else. It's just the filler stuff. You put it in to keep yourself busy. But had we started off and took the sand, the things that don't matter, the things that's not very important, and put them in the jar first, that you wouldn't have had room for the golf balls, to put all your golf balls in there, or to put the small pebbles in there, because the sand, they would have just completely taken over and filled everything up. Same thing if you'd have put the small pebbles in before you put the golf balls. That you've got to make it a priority to get those things, your golf balls, to be the most important to you. Some guy back at the classroom raises his hand and says, "Whoa, hey, professor, you put 2 cups of coffee in there. What does the cups of coffee have to do with anything?" And he said, "Well, I'm glad you asked, sir. Because the 2 cup of coffees represent that no matter how busy you are, there's always time for a cup of coffee with a friend." And that's where we are as managers and as leaders, as we're constantly managing and looking at our priorities. What are your golf balls? You've got to go and figure out those things that are important and what's going to give you the most return on your investment. Which is where it brings me to the Pareto Principle. And you may have heard this called the 20-80 rule or the 80-20 rule, however you want to look at it. And that I was told this as we were talking about, making the simple way to know how to make a decision. is to decide what to do and then do it. And then decide what not to do and then don't do that. I always thought that was a funny little joke about, it's really easy to make a decision. Just pick what you're going to do and then do it. But we all know it's not always that simple. There's a lot of different factors that are weighing. And where the Pareto Principle talks about is it says that 20% of your people, 20% of your priorities, 20% that fill in the blank will give you 80% of your results. And so what Pareto was talking about with this was he was saying that if you only spend your time on the 20%, that 20% that gives you 80%. So I spend on a few things that's going to give me a lot of things. That's where you want to do. You want to focus your time on the things that are going to give you your greatest ROI, or return on investment. And so that's important to remember. Not all of your employees are going to impact your business the same. The top 20% is going to carry the huge majority of the load. They're going to give you that 80%. Then oftentimes it's the bottom 20 that requires our most attention. We're trying to pick them up and elevate and lift them. That in contrast, that what we should be doing is spending our time with the 20% that's giving us that 80% return. And then that allowing that 20%, so the 20%, whatever that priority person, whoever, to then go and spend their 20% top on their 20% that gives them the 80% return. Allow them to do this. And so in order to go through and to determine that what is the Pareto Principle, how do I get this, the first thing you got to do is you got to go determine who are the top 20% when it comes to production. And then once you've determined that, so once I know who my 20%ers are, I want to go spend 80% of my time with them. I want to make the other people earn my time. Time is the most valuable thing. We said it earlier that you've got 86,400 minutes a day to use. So we've all got the same 24 hours or the 1,440 minutes. Now you've got to use those wisely. That's the most valuable asset that you have, time. And so you want to make sure that you're spending time on those that are going to give you the greatest return on your investment. One thing that I learned throughout college, and it's one thing that I'll sit here and say, at college I learned a whole lot of stuff about a whole lot of nothing. But one thing that I really learned that was a huge learning lesson it was my sophomore year. Yeah, I was in second semester sophomore year, and at the time I was only taking 4 classes, so I had 12 credit hours, and 3 of my classes I had 2 A's and a B, and I was not passing my chemistry class. I had an F in it, and so I had a scholarship and was wanting to make sure that I kept that scholarship because I really didn't want to have to go to an intersession course or a summer school. I had to make sure I kept it. And so I said, going into finals week, I spent all my time studying and getting ready to take and pass that chemistry test. Well, as fate would have it, that I didn't pass the final, which meant I didn't pass the class. I got an F in chemistry, which meant I was now on academic probation. But what happened in that time as well, that because I put off the other things that were going to carry me through, that those 2 A's, one became a B, the other became a C, and that B became a D. Because I spent time on something that I had no business spending in my time on. That because that's not what is most important. I should have focused on those other things that would have gave me a better return on my investment. And we've got to do the same thing too as the leaders. They figure out who's that 20%, devote 80% of your time to it, and then do the same thing with that 20%. Allow them to take their 20% and spend 80% of their time developing that. And so I've got an activity for you if you're not real sure. Okay, Aaron, this is great, but how do you go about determining this? And so what I did is I took a piece of paper. Now you can take any simple piece of paper, and I put 3 columns in it. So 2 small columns, and then I left this one big over here. And what you do, so you're making 3 columns, and in the 3rd column, they write the names of everyone who's on your team. So take a quick minute and jot those down. And then feel free to pause right now. That way, if you want to do the activity as we go, you can do that then. And then in the far left column, so the very first column, now you're going to fill it in with the letter A, B, or C for that person. So how do you determine that? An A means this person. Okay, so in the far left column, fill in one of these letters. That person left. If the person left the team or was working against me, you give them a letter A if that would make a significant impact. A B if that would make a negative impact, meaning that the team could still carry on if they left or that they were working against you. And a C if they would have little to no impact, meaning the team might actually improve if that person left or was working against you. So a significant impact, you mean this person could make or break the team. B, a negative impact, means you could still survive, you could carry on. And C, that would have little to no impact, like you would be better off without this person. And so after you've put, so in that far right column, you've went and put everybody's name down. In the far left column, you've determined, are they an A, a B, or a C? And then what we want to do is we want to rank our A's, then we want to rank our B's, and then we want to rank our C's. So start with your A's and label them 1, 2, 3, however many you had. Then do your B's and then do your C's. And then the next thing you do, so after you've labeled column 1 A's, B's, and C's, column 2, 1, 2, 3, etc. Next to those names on the right hand column, then for your top 20%, you want to go and stick an asterisk next to their name. So that quick simple math, if you have 5 people on your team, you pick 1. If you've got 10, you pick 2, 15, you pick 3, so on and so forth. Then what I want to do, after I've figured out who are my top 20%, I want to take another piece of paper and I want to list 2 to 5 ways that you can add values to those top people to help develop them. Remember, I believe that everyone is a leader in their own right. You can lead right where you are. It doesn't mean you're the boss. You're not the shot caller. But the more you help people to develop into a leader, the less you actually have to manage them. Then I'm going to go back to that original list and I'm going to look and see who did I mark with a C. Who was a C? And if I have the authority, I'm going to do what I can to help these individuals find a place on another team where they might be more effective. Now, obviously, if they're a C and if they left, nobody would even notice they're gone. They're not impacting your team the best right there. So how do we find another spot for them on the team, or even help them to be promoted to another company? You may have to do that, guys. That's one of the things I think is tough about a leader is we've got to make a lot of tough decisions. But when we make these decisions, we need to make sure that it's what's going to be right for the team. It's always about the team. That it's never about you anymore. It's what is best for my team. And then go do the same thing. So if you discovered you figured out your people, who's your top 20 people, then do the same thing for your priorities. And then go do the same thing for your responsibilities. It then makes it real crystal clear what you need to do. And look, you're probably going to need to do this multiple times. It's not a one and done thing. You're really most likely going to have to go and look several different times, like multiple times a year, every month, whatever it may be, to make sure that you've kept this in a line. And so, guys, in closing, we went and talked about the Pareto Principle and how to figure out which people, priorities, and responsibility are your top 20% that contribute to 80% of your results. It's so important to figure out how to maximize your time as a leader and to make sure that we're putting those golf balls in there. I want those golf balls in my jar. Because as long as I have those, the other things, they don't necessarily matter. And if you're looking for more help with developing your leadership skills, your personal development team, or maybe you're looking to do a retreat, or looking for a speaker at your next event, look, hit me up. All of my information is listed below. Or if you're wanting to get in touch with one of our sponsors, all of their contact information is below as well. They would love to help you with helping to figure out your priorities. And remember, every journey starts with a single step. Keep leading, keep growing, and keep innovating. Until next time, stay inspired and stay connected, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Clark Connection Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Clark Connection Podcast, where my goal is to add value to you. Make sure you like and follow the show. You can also connect with me via my website, coachaclark.com, or on all socials at coach_A_Clark. The links are in the description. Huge thanks to my sponsors, Wayne with 7K Metal Associates, Bobbie at A Comfy Quest LLC, and Andrew at Automate Integrate Professional Services. We look forward to bringing you more great content. See you next week.